More than 100 people are feared dead after violent storms Friday, spawning multiple tornadoes through Illinois, Kentucky, and at least 4 other states. And in downstate Edwardsville, 6 workers were killed after the Amazon warehouse they had been working in collapsed. The highest death toll was in Kentucky, where Governor Andy Beshear said today at least 74 people have been confirmed dead and more than 100 remain unaccounted for.
Of the ones that we know. The age range is 5 months to 86 years, and 6 are younger than 18.
Just a tragic situation all around. And joining us now are Celena Roldan, CEO of the American Red Cross in Illinois, and storm chaser and meteorologist at the College of DuPage, Paul Servatka. Welcome back, both of you, to Chicago Tonight. So first with you, Paul Servatka, give us a sense of the size and the scope of these storms that tore through the lower Midwest this weekend.
Well, the storms that came through on Friday were really pretty significant. One of the things that was marked this event as notable was the low-level acceleration of the air. So there was a fairly significant risk for damaging tornadoes. The major one, the one that went through well over 200 miles, most likely as a continuous track tornado, is the one that did most of the damage throughout Kentucky, although a number of the other tornadoes were also strong and affected other parts of the Midwest.
And Paul, what were the conditions that led to this outbreak?
Well, when we look at conditions for severe weather and rotating thunderstorms and tornadoes, we tend to look at instability, which is the ability of the air to rise, and the amount of wind shear, when the winds change direction or speed with height. Now, because it was in December, this is actually what we call a low instability situation. It wasn't the big thunderstorms that ripped through in May and June. However, the amounts of wind shear, the vertical wind shear, and the strength of the winds is what led to very strong tornadoes that developed in the evening and overnight hours.
And Celena Roldan, give us a sense of the size and scope of the recovery effort underway right now in Illinois, Kentucky, and other states.
Yes, so our thoughts are with all of those that have been impacted by these just tragic and devastating tornadoes. Families that have lost loved ones, lost their homes, and especially during this holiday season, really are dealing with the worst moments in their lives. So the American Red Cross is there responding across all of these communities and in the hardest impacted areas. Over 100 Red Crossers are on the ground, with over 200 more heading in that direction as well. Over 10 Red Crossers from the Illinois region alone are heading out to Kentucky and some of the most impacted areas to provide support, help, and hope.
And for the folks out there watching that wonder what the best method of assisting is, what is your message to them?
Yes. So right now it's about basic necessities and needs. So the American Red Cross is there sheltering over, there have been over 12 emergency shelters with over 300 people in shelters across these states that were impacted by these tornadoes. And we're providing food, water, again, basic necessities, and also providing critical mental health support to communities that have suffered such a significant trauma. So some of the best ways that individuals can help right now is through donations. But there's different kinds of donations. So one is donation of time. If individuals are willing to volunteer, because we also have local disasters and responses happening every single day, primarily in the form of home fires, we're asking people to consider going to redcross.org to join us as a volunteer. Donations, financial donations, are also the fastest and easiest way to make sure that we can have everything there on site: shelter, food, clothing for people that need it the most, and also to continue to donate blood. Blood drives were canceled across the country when these events happened, and we are asking people to consider rolling up a sleeve and helping to save a life through making a blood donation.
And Paul Servatka, one of these storms featured a tornado that cut a 200-mile path through the ground. Is that unusual for a tornado to last that long and to cut a path that long?
Yes, it's very unusual. In fact, when we look through history, we do not have many tornadoes that are exceeding 100 miles. And so to get to 200 miles is an extremely rare event. It's actually what we would almost say is a Goldilocks situation, where the parts of the environment that created the storm, that kept it in this perfect balance between continual regeneration of the tornado and not the destruction of the tornado, were in check. So to have over 100 or 200 mile storms is extremely rare. This one looks very much like the 1925 tri-state tornado, which was well over 200 miles as well. These are just incredibly well-balanced events. Even in more violent environments, we don't see often these long-track tornadoes.
Celena Roldan, we heard from the governor of Kentucky there. We've read dispatches that entire small towns are completely leveled. What do you know about the scope of the damage facing certain towns in downstate Illinois, Kentucky, Indiana, other states, and where is the crisis most acute right now?
Sure. So we know that, a large part of this devastation is happening in Kentucky, but, anyone that experiences this kind of a disaster, it is the largest and most significant thing that is happening to them and to their communities. And the Red Cross is committed to being there for these communities. Disaster assessment is starting to happen. Again, it's still a challenge with roads being closed, power outages, and the Red Cross is committed to being there in the weeks and months to come to help as long as we are needed. And I think as time goes on and that disaster assessment happens, we will have a better idea of all of the needs that the communities will need.
Paul Servatka, this is always a difficult question. We're dealing with a warming climate in the long term here. Do you make a connection with a powerful line of storms in December like this and a warming climate?
When we have severe weather outbreaks in what we call the cold season, and I'd probably put that somewhere between November through early March, we are looking at events that are not common, but they're not unprecedented. So there's been significant events that have occurred within the month of December. Again, everything is slightly different, and the perfect balance can make a difference in what's actually resulting. But we've had these events before. A lot of the research that I've seen concerning climate change and tornadoes is that oftentimes we're going to have significant outbreaks with longer periods of tranquil weather in between. But to take any event and then to assess it to climate change is impossible. We look at longer term trends to try to understand how these things behave. This, however, is definitely a significant cold season event, and it will go down in the record books.
Celena Roldan, we only have a few seconds, but I do have to bring up that Amazon warehouse in Edwardsville. What do we know about the latest there? 6 people dead. Do we know anything else?
No, again, that as the governor said, and this is just such a horrific tragedy for the community that experienced this disaster. And, again, the Red Cross is working alongside all of the emergency management partners, the governor's office, to provide any support that is needed for that community.
All right, we're going to have to keep following this. Again, a tragic situation over the weekend. And our thanks to Paul Servatka and Celena Roldan.